Welcome back to Years in Glory, everybody. It's just me today. No Britt or Liv. Miss them dearly, but the show must go on. Alas, we will be recapping days 1 and 2 of testing today. So I'll get right into it. I will miss my pals, my buddies, my best boys, gals, girls, my sweet cheese, as they say in What We Do in the Shadows. So yeah, we're only going over days. Me. I'm only going over days 1 and 2 of testing because it's currently Thursday local time for me. So we'll see what day 3 brings. I'm sure we'll chat about it in another episode. But I do want to cite my sources in pulling from the F1 website, the live coverage, and motorsportweek.com as well. So let's just get into it. Day 1, February 26th. Kind of crazy. I mean, I guess it still kind of technically is the winter. It's not the solstice. It's I don't know, whenever spring starts. It's really cold, rainy, and windy at Bahrain, so really interesting conditions for the cars to be running in. The day 1 did not see any crashes, so that's really good for the rookies. There's also, I'll talk about it later, Kimi Antonelli did a very good job. But very exciting to see Lewis and Red officially on track, officially in 2025 season capacity. Really, really exciting. We are Ferrari fans on the pod. I am a Ferrari fan. I'm wearing my sad Charles Leclerc shirt today to keep me company while I'm all alone. But no, very exciting testing. Obviously, it's not the same conditions as the races, so we'll see a lot of changes and we'll probably see cars behave differently on track when it's actually race conditions, but it will be very fun to speculate with some of the stuff that we've seen. So Lando set the fastest time overall, I think, in both sessions, in both the AM and the PM sessions. But Kimi Antonelli did look really good in the morning. After the big crash he had in practice last season, I'm really interested to see how he goes in the races themselves, because I think the environment is different, but kind of having the seat now for real, not just speculated, although he probably knew he had it and they just had signed an NDA or something. But all of that being out and mentally it being a little bit of a different game has got to feel different, even though you're just in testing, it's different game already. And it is interesting too that Bono is his race engineer. So it's yes, Lewis traded his wife of however many years for a young Italian stallion, as they said in the F175. But also Bono kind of gets to have a rookie too. He gets to have someone new to work with as well, which will be so interesting because I'm sure the rapport and the straight up just the relationship that they built, Lewis and Bono, has to be, a breakup in a way. And so to have just some random new kid, and he's a child, I don't know. I think it's going to be really interesting. I'm actually really eager to hear their radio messages to one another because I don't know. There's so many iconic ones from Bono of it's hammer time and whatever. And I don't know. Maybe I'm mourning that a little bit. But in the first AM session for day 1 as well, Liam Lawson and Lewis Hamilton were going pretty quick early on. And while I was reading through the live coverage recaps of just here's literally everything that happened in the sessions, the F1 would post polls of who do you think is going to be better at this team? Who do you think is going to be better at this team or get more points at this team? And one of the polls that they posted on day 1 was who is going to come out on top at Williams. And you can vote for Alex and you can vote for Carlos. And the breakdown was, I don't know if this is a shock or not. I'm not shocked because I agree. But it is 85% people thinking that Carlos Sainz is going to come out on top and the other 15 thinking that it's going to be Alex. And there are some results here that I think are going to be really interesting to see maybe in action and maybe revisiting our perceptions of different drivers. I don't know. So I thought it was interesting. There's a couple of other polls that I'll talk about as well. But then in session 1, day 1, Liam Lawson is seeing some issues with the Red Bull, again, from the F1 website. There was a lockup, some maybe under oversteering, big smoke plumes coming up, which just kind of begs the question, is it still such a max-tailored car that it's not responding to any other drivers? Are they going to balance it between the drivers more? Or is it just such a finicky car and Max is just such a good driver that he can work around all of that to make it perform the way that it does when a seasoned driver like Checo was struggling so much? So we'll have to see if it's a car thing, if it's a driver thing. It's probably a little bit of both at the end of the day, but it'll be interesting to see how all of that shakes out again under real racing conditions when they've kind of locked everything down and And, you know, it's not the testing environment. The stakes are kind of high and everything's more real, for lack of a better word. For that first session, Kimi Antonelli was at the top, even with other more seasoned drivers, which, again, like, it's testing. Whatever. It's not even free practice. But I am speculating and I am reading into things. So I don't know what to do with that. In the race coverage as well, or sorry, excuse me, testing coverage. I'm so excited. I can't wait. In the testing coverage, they have a picture of Gabriel Bortoletto's helmet, which feels very reminiscent of Senna's helmet. Not just because they're both Brazilian drivers, but because, I mean, I guess if they're going with the flag, the colors are going to be the same. But there is like the steak green, but there's also yellow. It has kind of the same stripes and lines that feel reminiscent of Senna's helmet. So I thought that was cute. If it is a nod to Ayrton Senna, then that's great. If it's not, it's cool also. But I liked it. Let's see. Is this session 2? I can't remember. Yeah, I think this must be session 2 by now. Hadjar spins in session 2 of day 1. That's the note. That's all I wrote for it. George does well through the session. And then they bring up another poll as I was reading through all this recap. Because I've had a very busy week at work and I could not watch, but also it's so many hours. If you're watching them, like, my hat's off to you, because that's a lot of commitment. But they had another poll of who's going to come out on top at Ferrari this year. And it was a far closer split than the one that we saw at Williams, where it was all for Carlos. This one is only 65. Well, I shouldn't say only, like, it's still over half. 65% people think Charles Leclerc is going to come out on top at Ferrari. I have to agree, not just because I'm wearing his shirt, but because of a lot of reasons. Like, he's been there for way longer, and he's been their golden boy. I think, and I've said it on the pod, I think Lewis is there to kind of start to wrap up his career, which I think is a very respectable move. Even if it feels, I don't know, I'll probably cry when he retires. But it feels, it's different life stages, different expectations, different situations for both of them. But then, yeah, the rest of the 35% of people who voted thought that Lewis Hamilton was going to come out on top. I feel like maybe these people are expecting Lewis to get in a red car and be able to turn things around. But I think part of it is just, this is where he's at in his career as an athlete in the sport. So I don't know. They had a similar poll for Oliver Behrman and Esteban Ocon at Haas, and they were fairly equal. I didn't write down the exact numbers. I just wrote down they were fairly equal, which makes sense, I guess. You see somebody coming from a team like Alpine who's kind of in the middle of the pack, and then you see a rookie who seems very promising, especially with the performance that he did in Carlos's car around this time last year. So I don't know. Well, I'm just really excited to actually see things kind of like start to put pen to paper and it not be so much sketching with pencil, if that makes sense. But in session 2, day 1, Charles is at the top of the table at one point, and then they had a power outage, it seems, and there was a red flag for about an hour, and then they just like kept going, which after so many hours has to be absolutely exhausting. They did also resume after the sun had gone down, so it was like nighttime. I don't know. I mean, like, I guess if like that's what you're doing, it's like, okay, yeah, absolutely, I'll do it. But like, the sun goes down and I need to go to bed. I'm really excited for daylight savings to whatever end in the States, whenever spring forward, so we like get more daylight in the afternoon, evenings. So and then Motorsport Week has all of the timetables with everyone's times. So in terms of everyone's timing, Charles, for the Ferrari fans, Charles ended up 4th. Lewis was all the way down in 13th, which again makes me wonder, like, is this just where he's at in his career and his performance, or like, I don't know. It was interesting. It was interesting to see there be such a disparity between both of those. Like, is it him? Is it the car? Is it something else? But if it's the car, then why is Charles making it perform so well all the way into 4th? I don't know. And then Carlos puts the Williams right behind Charles. So they are still one right next to the other, which makes me think, and I'm so sorry if you're an Alex Albon fan. I think Alex Albon as a person is great. Do I fear perhaps he's not as good as driver as all of us think he is because of the stint that he had at Red Bull? Yeah, I think maybe he's not as good as we remember him being. And I think He's had teammates, and you guys know I love Logan Sargent. Y'all know I love him. Maybe he's just had teammates that make him look good. And now that he's driving next to someone like Carlos Sainz, and I'll get into day 2, we see similar performance. Like, maybe he's just not as good as we think he is. So I think there's a lot to think about, especially with regard to expected perceptions and performances of some of the drivers that we've had around for a long time. So that's my day 1 recap. We'll go into day 2, which was today, the 27th, when I'm recording. It rained. It was raining in the morning. There were puddles. They reported puddles on the F1 website. At one point, Hamilton puts the fastest time in, and then Carlos is right behind him again. And then literally I've written down, does Alex just suck? ? Which obviously he doesn't suck. There's only 20 people who are good enough to do this, and Alex is one of them. For now. Asterisk. This is the question that I'm asking, though. You know, like, he's being put compared to a different standard now. So I think it'll be interesting, especially when we get into real racing and perhaps with, I don't know what the guy's contract is, but like with some of the brevity that they've spent like making the decisions, as in like they've made pretty cut and dry decisions of like, okay, Logan's gone. We are replacing him. Who knows if maybe Alex Albon's contract has something built in where he has an out and can get kicked. I don't know. I think it would be very interesting because it feels like Alex has been the chosen one so far. But is that just because he's been better? So, I don't know. Maybe we see Williams' resurgence. Maybe I don't beat the You know what? I don't beat the Williams allegation fans. Wait, what? Allegations? Fan allegations? I don't beat the Williams fan allegations. Because I have the sweater. I'm talking like absolutely glazing Carlos Sainz in the Williams right now. But also he's doing well. But also it's testing, you know. I don't know. Anyway, we'll move on. There's more notes. There's more things to debrief. It rains. Everybody gets off the track. At one point, Esteban Ocon's the only person on the track and enters. And then he also gives up. And then it seems like it was a brief rain, but it also seems like it did rain. I needed a weatherman there. So, yeah, at one point there was no one on the track. They were just like waiting for the rain to stop. And then George goes out on the mediums, which is a very interesting take. I felt like they didn't really want to have to engage with the inters and the wet tires as much, which it's not like rain is very common, but I feel like it would still be good to know how things test. I don't know. I think it's very interesting that they're having to test under cold and rainy and wet conditions, as opposed to like it's in the Northern Hemisphere is going to be the summer where they're going to be racing in really, really high heat. So I think it's posing a really interesting obstacle maybe, or just like a layer for them to have to account for throughout all of this. So then there's actually contact in testing. Nico Hülkenberg and Oscar Piastri have contact. It didn't really seem like if it had been a race, I have my notes here saying that like I probably would have just called it a racing incident, where it just seemed like maybe they were both trying to account for the car oversteering, understeering racing lines and just kind of clipped. I think it was Nico Hülkenberg just kind of clipped Oscar's car, which is just like so fascinating. Like the stakes are high, but they're not that high right now. So for things to get so close, like you're just trying to get data. You're just trying to figure out what works. It's not really worth getting so close. And yet we've had contact already in the 2025 season. So I thought that was interesting. At the end of the second session, Hamilton is at the top of the times, which big turnaround from the 13th that he was yesterday, the day before. So yeah, you know, it rained during session 2 actively a bit more. There were a couple of spins too, and it wasn't like just rookies. Now we're actually seeing, like we were seeing, Sainz spun and Charles Leclerc also spun. My note here says, I'm spinning like a ballerina. I feel like there should be like some sort of compilation of all the times like a single driver has spun. Maybe we do it for all the drivers, all the active drivers. There wouldn't be a lot of content. Well, maybe there would be a lot more content for the rookies. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like time versus ability to spin. But yeah, it's just so cold. Things just seem to be slipping around. There's like not enough heat for things to grip, and like getting things up to temperature is just going to take so much longer for them to have that grip. So The other note that I have for the end of session 2, day 2, is that Haas at one point created a human wall because they must have been doing something to the car that they didn't want anybody to see. So I just thought that was like really funny. But the end of testing day 2, in terms of all the times, ends with the top 3 being Carlos Sainz in the Williams. Again, Alex Albon. What's happening? And then Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. So I said it before, I'll say it again. I'm really interested to see how this translates to a real racing environment. It is just testing, but I can't wait. We're literally 2 weeks out, basically, from Australia, from the first race of the season. So that will be fascinating. I think it's fascinating to see what's going on in testing. Again, testing is not done. The regulations haven't changed a lot, so catch us next year for the 2026 regulations. I can't wait for everybody to suck because nobody knows how to put into practice the new regulations. But I don't want everybody to suck. I want them to go fast, but it's going to level the playing field. It's going to be fascinating. So that is day 1 and day 2 recap of the 2 testing days that we've had so far. Really interesting things to unpack. I need to see these people on a racetrack and actual racing conditions. I'm so excited. And the last bit that I'm excited to talk about is there's a piece of news that came out that Britt sent into the group chat today, which is interesting, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. But they've implemented a new rule for the Monaco Grand Prix, which, again, I'm wearing my Charles Leclerc shirt. And this rule seems to have been put into place to actively make the race more interesting. Because if you've seen the Monaco Grand Prix, if you're familiar with the Monaco Grand Prix, it's very much how you qualify because it's such a tricky track to pass on. And we've seen F2 overtakes. We've seen Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly fight, take their earrings out and go at it, just trying to pass one another. What was that, under a yellow flag or something? It was like a crazy weird condition. Or right after, I don't know. So what they've implemented as a rule is it is now a mandatory 2-stop race for both wet and dry races, which is gonna, make the pit strategy a bigger part and pull the team more into it. It's not just gonna be can your driver qualify well, Charles Leclerc? But it's gonna be so much more of the team aspect of the strategy, and that is where I am terrified because sometimes Ferrari makes me nervous with their strategy. And with Lewis Hamilton there, it's gonna be hard to know. I mean, I need Ferrari to pick Charles Leclerc over Lewis Hamilton. Fred, if you're out there, please pick Charles. But yeah, so the rest of the rule goes on to explain that if it is a dry race, there is a minimum of 3 sets of tire used. So you start on one, pit stop 1 to the second one, and then second pit stop to the third tire, and a minimum of 2 compounds. So it's not I think it'd be crazy if you had to do 2 stops, 3 compounds. That would be crazy. Because then you're using all of them, unless it's wet, unless you're going to go out on a dry track in an inter. I don't know. I think it's going to be really interesting. Monaco is going to be in late May, so we'll see how that goes. Again, Ferrari, please pick Charles over Lewis. Please. Could you 2 years in a row? That would be sick. Yeah, but that is all I have got for you all today. A short and sweet episode. Liv, Britt, I miss you. Please come back to me. But yeah, we're getting close to the start of the season. We'll be able to start our typical, our typical race recaps, which will be very fun. Get to talk about all the rookies. Get to talk about everything that's happened in testing and how that's translating to the races. So stay tuned. Exciting season ahead of us. And for our typical goodbye, thank you for listening. Bye.